Good day. We're going to talk about data analysis for calculating means and standard deviations. So this is step 4 in our data analysis assignment. So you need 3 things open. You need the SPSS file, you need the Word document, and you need a blank Excel file. So get those open. You can pause this. And then once you get those open, I'll walk you through the steps that we need to go through. So in class, I'm going to make sure you understand how to calculate means and standard deviations and generate 95% confidence intervals, which is pretty standard way of reporting descriptive statistics. And then at home, in your group, you're going to calculate the means and standard deviation and 95% confidence intervals for age, height, and weight. And we're going to do both of these by group. So we have a healthy group and an injured group. Okay, so I would have you open so there's your blank Excel spreadsheet. So that's where you'll end up with. And let's go to our data. So this is our data that we've imported. I've cleaned all of this data. Yes, we do have some missing data along the way, but for the most part, all of our data is pretty cleaned up. There's a few that have some high decimal points that I can fix as we go through. So what I'm going to have you do is calculate the descriptive data. And so when you do any kind of mathematical calculation in SPSS, primarily you're going to use the analyze. And so there are multitudes of different statistical procedures that can be used to within this. So if you look, there's one where it says compare means, and that's one way you can analyze the data. That requires you to do some additional calculations to get the confidence intervals, which you can do. That's up to you as an individual if you like to do it. But what I've found that works pretty well is I don't analyze the data using the one-way analysis of variance. I'm just using the descriptive statistics that are provided from this calculation. So what I would recommend is go to the one-way ANOVA, and of course that shows up on the other screen. There we go. And that brings up a menu. And so what we're going to do is we're going to compare the baseline scores of the two groups. So our independent variable, our independent factor is groups. So we take groups and we put that into factor. And we're going to just take the baseline values of the pin shoulder scores. Now, one trick that I've learned over the years is this box is expandable. So it's easier to see more information. And this is where all the labels have come in to make it a little clearer to me as to what I'm analyzing. So I'm going to take the pain score, satisfaction score, and I'm just holding the control button, the function score, and the total score, and generate descriptive statistics from that. So those are all the dependent variables. So those 4 dependent variables are what I'm going to calculate. So there's a problem, as I see, that I missed in my cleaning up of the data. So what I see right now is that this is still not considered numeric data because it doesn't have a ruler. So I'm going to push those back for a second. I'm going to close that variable view. I want to go back up here to my pin shoulders, and I need to change this from nominal to scale. So now that will be more consistent. It still might run the analysis correctly, but this way I know it will run the analysis correctly. So back again, analyze, compare means, one-way ANOVA. Of course, this jumps over. Spread this out so I can see everything. So my independent variable is group. I put that in factors, and then I just want the data that I'm interested in as I go down. All of these are the I got one post. So these are all the pre-scores. Okay, so as we look over here, there's lots of little buttons that you can pick from. So typically, when you want various options to run, that's going to be under the option command. everything's showing up on the other side. There we go. So it brings up another menu. And for what we want to do, all we want to do is create descriptive statistics. You can click multitudes of buttons and it gives you lots of stuff, but it really helps to know what you're clicking on. And a lot of this information is available on YouTube if you search the literature and go into SPSS. But this is basically to try to help you on a case-by-case basis. So we'll hit continue. So we've picked descriptive statistics. We have the factors that we're interested in. We have the independent factor of group, and we hit OK, and it generates a table. So here is the one-way descriptive. Now we'll get to analysis of variance, but for right now, all we're going to focus on is descriptive. So now what we're going to do is we're going to copy that, and we're going to open our blank Excel spreadsheet, and I'm going to paste that in. If you paste it with this one, it sort of gives you the color and formatting. If you paste it with this one, I like that better. It's just the generic numbers as you go through that. So in the homework assignment, I asked you to organize this data by group. So we're going to have a healthy and an injured group. And then we have multitudes of factors, right? Pain, satisfaction, function, and total score. So typically what I've seen organized is that you would have a row for healthy and injured, and then each of the different scores, the means and the standard deviations, or the means and the confidence intervals, represented for each category of pain score and satisfaction. So I'm going to format this table just like I would want you to do it for your assignment. So when you go to do this, you're going to have two groups, healthy, too bad I can't type, and injured. Okay. And then what we're really wanting to do is look at those mean and standard deviation values, but I'm going to turn these on their side. So I'm going to have the pain, and you can go on and type it all the way out, pain score, and spread your table out a little bit. And then you're going to have your confidence interval. You can type it out, or you can use that as an abbreviation, 95. So that's the default that SPSS gives you as a 95% confidence interval. And then I can subscript that with that little calculation. So then I'm going to have the pain satisfaction. And then I'm just going to copy and paste that over. Again, I'll have to spread this out. And then I'm going to have the pain function score. Score becomes a little redundant, so I don't know that you absolutely have to have that. You might put that in the description of the table. Oops, sorry, wrong one. And again, the confidence interval. And then finally, the pain total score. Okay, so now, because I've had this set up and I have to pay attention to what I'm copying over, so I'm going to take this two values, that's my healthy and injured, copy, paste, and then for my confidence interval, it goes from 30, lower bound and upper bound, right? So that's the bottom, that's the top. So typically that's presented something like 30, 30, because everybody had no pain. This was the healthy group. And this could be rounded, so you could say 21 to 26, or you can use decimal points. So I think it's probably fine to say 21 to 26. And that's the confidence interval for that. I put an extra space in there. And so on. So I would repeat that for each one of these categories. Paste that down. Paste that down. Paste that down. And then I'd go on and finish typing in those confidence intervals. Now, in the instructions, I asked you to format this as a standard AMA document. So let me show you what I mean by that. So if you highlight the data, or I'm sorry, the headers, you're going to put borders around that. You're going to put a bottom border and a top border. And then at the bottom of your data on this column will be your bottom border. And then typically what you should have here is descriptive, baseline, pin, shoulder scores. Shoulder, I can't spell. With 95% confidence intervals. So I'd finish creating these confidence intervals, right? So this would be 9 to 10. 10's the highest it can be. And 3.5. So I could say I would typically round this to 3, 7. The decimal points in my mind for the precision of this instrument are really not necessary. That's a personal preference. So pin function score is 59, 60. With 60 the highest one you can be. And then here would be 39, 51. So it's pretty clear there's a difference between the injured and healthy, even just looking at the confidence intervals when you look at this data. And I think it's really important to get in the habit of looking at your data descriptively and not just jump right into the p-values, because this really helps you understand what is meaningful about this data and what is not meaningful about this data. Perfect. Okay, so when that's all done, this can be deleted because you've copied and pasted that. They're not attached. So something like this is what I'm looking for, but if we go back to the Word document, you're going to repeat that in and do it for age, height, and weight by group to turn in for homework. So we had talked about if you were doing a randomized clinical trial or you're doing a quasi-experimental and you want your two groups to be equal, this is one way of indicating that you have equal values at baseline. You can certainly run a t-test or an analysis of variance and see if they are truly the same. It's clear looking at these confidence intervals that there's not much overlap. So the top number on the bottom and the bottom number on the healthy don't overlap. So I'm pretty confident that those would be statistically significant. And based on looking at the analysis of the ANOVA, it's p-value of 0.000, which means it's way past 99.9% probability that those two groups are different. So for your homework, you would label this, as I instructed in the document, of Apple. I'm sorry, that's for the whole assignment. So this would be labeled as your mean and standard deviation tab. And then we'll do the next tab for the frequency distributions. So at the bottom, you can see I have means and standard deviation, frequency distribution, normal, and box plots. So those would be the headings you would use for each one. So each report or each question or step will be on a separate worksheet, but you're going to turn it in as a group. So that's what I'm sort of looking for on that. Hopefully that'll clarify everything, and then I'll do the next step.